The bad thing about it is, like I started this out with, it's our daughters that are super young that are playing with these dolls. And then as they get older, you don't want them to have that inclination to be like, oh, Daddy, I want to look just like this doll.
Today, we've got something, it's a little fun. It's been in the news. Dr. Danielpour recently had an article. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, it's the big Barbie craze. So if you guys seen the movie, I know that it's a blockbuster hit, and it's really just crushing all the other movies with the sales that they're doing. And I heard it's actually really good. I haven't seen it, but I was approached by the Hollywood Reporter, and they did an article which actually says Barbie's success has top cosmetic doctors worried about new wave of unrealistic beauty standards.
Yeah, this is really difficult, plastic surgery, with the whole wave of social media. We've talked about this before, the detriment that it's caused, people coming in trying to look like someone else or a character, or, you've seen some of the crazy cat lady, human Ken doll, things like that. And so we're going to kind of go over the new Barbie trend and kind of discuss this and weigh in and give you our thoughts. I mean, the idea behind this podcast, we delve into the latest trends and technologies and controversies in the world of beauty. And I think that this is definitely listed under that controversy. As you've said, over the last couple of years, there's been this growing fascination with achieving a look that's often referred to as the Barbie aesthetic. And we said from social media influencers to celebrities, many of our patients are looking or seeking plastic surgery and cosmetic procedures to do just that. And, what are the implications of such a desire?
What makes it very hard for us, and I'm talking about just you and I, or anyone that's listening that has a little girl. Dr. Layke and I both have little daughters, and Barbies are intended to be played with young girls, right? Or guys. And here's the issue. When you start really kind of getting this Barbie aesthetic at such a young age, I think it skews the fact that we are all very different. We are all come from different places in the world, and we all look different. So we're not going to all ever look the same. And to make people, to try to make people look like a Barbie figure, which is a doll, is very unrealistic. Now,
listen, I think the interesting part, we all understand that toys are made with aesthetics because it makes the child want to play with them. And what's better than a child playing with their toy? That it boosts sales, and that becomes the toy of the year, right? So it has to look good, feel good, do something, make the right noises. And maybe what we'll do is we'll kind of define what the Barbie aesthetic actually entails.
Sure.
Okay. So even the original Barbie, now there are so many different types with skin colors and ethnicities and things like that, but they all kind of have a very similar characteristics. And so it's usually characterized by features that are small nose, full lips, prominent brow bone, large and round eyes, a slim and curvy figure, and flawless, poreless skin. And the goal is to achieve a look that's youthful, symmetrical, and otherwise otherworldly, right? Because we all know in plastic surgery, we're all asymmetric. Absolutely. I love rolling out the Vectra, the 3D image, and there is one of the components is where you split the face down the middle and you replicate two lefts and two rights. And we can see that if you look at your face, a carbon copy of two lefts and a carbon copy of two rights, that we look like three different people. And that is normal.
And slightly strange, too, sometimes when you do that.
Definitely. And the idea is most of us can't see those asymmetries, right? Because when we look at one another, our brains naturally takes the better half and replicates it. That's why the common phrase, they look better in person.
Absolutely.
And some people don't realize that they have these asymmetries until we actually show it to them. So, we've seen celebrities like Kylie Jenner and influencers like Rodrigo Alves, also known as the human Ken doll, openly discussing their cosmetic procedures to achieve this look. But is this just a passing fad, do you think, or is this here to stay?
Just like everything in fashion and cosmetic surgery, there's this ebb and flow. Things become very fashionable, and then they go away. I mean, think about it. Skinny jeans, for example. I'm just throwing this out. Everyone's been wearing skinny jeans. Now everything's becoming super baggy again, like in the 80s, where the rappers would wear those big baggy jeans. So I do think that there are trends, and we follow these trends. Now, interestingly enough, the trend of looking like Barbie didn't really come into effect until the last 5 or 10 years, where plastic surgeons started doing things like really trying to make somebody look like somebody else. And I think that's, again, in my opinion, I think that's sometimes the fault of the practitioner. That's a fault of the plastic surgeon. I think you could make somebody, and again, I love the way you kind of go about it with the patients. I'm going to give you the best result to make you the best person that you are. I can't make you look like someone else. But it's happening, and it's happening a lot. And the bad thing about it is, like I started this out with, it's our daughters that are super young that are playing with these dolls. And then as they get older, you don't want them to have that inclination to be like, oh, Daddy, I want to look just like this doll. Yeah. And imagine if your daughter comes to you at 19 and says, I want fuller lips, bigger eyes, bigger bust, narrower waist. And you'd be like, oh my God, she's 18 years old. What am I going to do here?
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah, this becomes extremely tough for a plastic surgeon having a daughter. I mean, I wrote that book, No Body is the Same, to try to circumvent that issue. And I think, it's just something that has to be instilled in our young. But when we look at, I think, we've defined what the Barbie trend is, the aesthetic.
Right.
But I think that there's a psychology behind it. I think it's much deeper than that. And so I think it's important to explore kind of the concept of beauty standards and their evolution over time. Throughout history, ideals of beauty have shifted dramatically. And that's what you're saying, these trends that we see, the scoop noses in the 80s and 90s, now that looks awful to us.
Think about the brows. Think about how brows used to be. It used to be in vogue to make them very thin. Now, you go microblade and make them even thicker.
Yeah.
So these trends keep going in and out. And the interesting, or even big breasts. When we first started, we were interviewed by Entertainment Tonight, maybe about 2 years into our practice. And we were talking about the trend to downsize because that Pam Anderson look wasn't out there anymore.
Yeah.
And I think you could probably even see that if you look at Barbie dolls from the 50s, till now, and how much they've changed. They've got bigger breasts, bigger waist, smaller waist. Now they have plus size Barbies and everything else because you can't just have that one aesthetic kind of perfection.
Yep. You're right. And listen, I understand in 1959 when they came up with the first 2 sets of Barbie dolls, they ultimately, it was a doll. There was nothing behind it other than it looked like, the quote unquote perfect image of a female. And so, of course, everybody, there's negative connotations in saying that we're all trying to aspire to achieve to look exactly like this person. I think that the psychology behind it runs a little deeper. And is it that we are now trying to achieve these filtered images on social media? The other thought is that maybe there's a little bit of nostalgia, almost as if we are longing for a simpler, more carefree time in life. And the doll represents an image of perfection, a world filled with uncertainties and challenges. But some individuals may seek a way to regain a sense of control and perfection through altering their appearance. And so that's why, now the more we see on social media, people come to us and say, look, I want to look like this person.
Yes. And I think, and it's very difficult because me and you both know, some surgeons will overpromise and tell people that they can make them look like other people. We're not here to do that. We're just here to give you the best version of yourself, however that may be. Now, it's interesting what you bring up with social media. It just makes things even more complicated because you go from a doll to then becoming in your teens and having the ability to take a filter and change the way you look. And make yourself look like a Barbie.
Yeah.
And then you see that, and then it gives you that perception of, oh my God, look how much better I look.
Yeah. Listen, how I feel about social media. I think, I use it so the rest of my family who lives in other states can see what's happening with the family and things like that. And obviously, you want to show off achievements and things like that. I totally get it. But social media plays such a negative role in fueling the Barbie trend. And, when we look at these surgically enhanced looks through these filters, where they make the eyes bigger and the nose smaller and the lips bigger, it's essential to question the authenticity of the images, first of all. And are they truly representative of the individual's happiness and self-esteem? Or do they perpetuate this cycle of depression and longing to be someone else? And so I think, social media has become, again, every single one of us uses it. We're addicted to it. We look at it all day long, but I have a feeling that, it's spiraling out of control.
But the interesting part about the Barbie trend and the fact that this movie's really taken off. Mm-hmm. It's got a very high score on Rotten Tomatoes. Everyone I've talked to said it's really good. And the reason for it is the message. The message is really what's important. It's talking about inclusivity and female empowerment,
and that you don't have to be perfect.
Which is interesting because it's completely it's a hypocrisy,
debunking,
right?
It's debunking the traditional thought process behind the Barbie.
Totally. So it's weirdly contraindicating everything that we're saying, and it's very hypocritical, because if you watch the movie and you feel empowered and you feel like this female empowerment and inclusivity and how the world's changing in such a great way and giving, women the ability to be the biggest bosses of all. And other countries are even opening up, certain rights for females, which is amazing, right? But then at the same time, people look at that and then they miss the message and just go after the aesthetics of it.
Yeah,
it's always happened, right?
Yeah, listen, that brings up the ethical considerations of the Barbie trend. I mean, the entire, as with any trend involving cosmetic procedures, there are ethical considerations that can't be ignored. And the pursuit of the Barbie aesthetic raises questions about the line between self-improvement and self-obsession. And, I think as well as the potential impact on our mental health. And so body dysmorphic disorder, something that we see regularly in plastic surgery, and the pressure to undergo constant modifications to improve yourself, should be taken very seriously. I mean, these are things that, again, I think there are good messages coming out of the movie. I just hope that people don't take the wrong images and distort their views.
Very true. And I think that with anything in life, you can take the positive and you can take the negative, and you can look at the aesthetics of Barbie. And if you are a teenager or even somebody, in their 20s or 30s and say, I want to look like, well, you can take, look at her. She's got flawless skin. So go after that. Try to emulate that. Try to emulate other things. You can't necessarily take your nose, or you can actually if you but you can't change your whole appearance and look like someone else. It's just better to look at the things that she has and improve those things. And again, it's a lot easier to preach it than actually do it, because a lot of people look at this and they say, hey, I want to look like Margot Robbie. Well, listen, I wish everybody looked like Margot Robbie. She's gorgeous, but it's not realistic. That's the beauty of the world, and everyone does look different. And Barbie's great, and I think even the manufacturers, even Mattel over the years, realized that they can't keep making this perfect aesthetic, and they have to make different dolls so all the kids could relate in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, listen, my personal opinion, I believe there's a beauty in all uniqueness, and that's interesting. There are some individuals that have a unique look. It doesn't necessarily have to look like Barbie. And if you look at a lot of even some of the supermodels, I mean, there's something that's eye-catching. Granted, there are some that are beautiful, and they do look like Barbie or the Barbie aesthetic. But, I think there's a beauty in everyone's separate uniqueness. And that's where, otherwise, I think the world becomes a very boring place. And so what we have to do is now look ahead. So say, even on our platform, with the tools that we have been given, what should we be looking out for? Where does this lead us in the future? And as technology advances, so does the ability to alter our appearance. And so, do you see a growing acceptance of diverse beauty standards, or are we pigeonholed into the Barbie aesthetic? And the other thing is, it's crucial we continue to have open discussions about the implications, of such trends and motivations behind them. I think what we need is to look at why we're trying to achieve a particular look. Where's the hole that we're trying to fill? And I think this is really going to relate to mental health. And the happier you are with yourself, I've met some of the most amazing people that arguably may not be, supermodels, but they have such a great outlook on life because they are confident and they're not trying to patch a hole that's, continuously missing something. And more often than not, those people have really secured their mental health. They meditate, they're in community, they're part of something, whether it's a religion or, a particular community. And I think that that's what we need to look forward to in order to avoid disaster.
It's interesting you say that, though. Growing up, and again, I think it's different from a male perspective than a female perspective, but growing up, you looked at certain actors, or any type of celebrity, you're like, wow, I want to be like him. But you didn't necessarily maybe you did your hairstyle like Tom Cruise in Top Gun or something like that, right? But it was never that push to be exactly like that. Now, again, we're different because as boys, we didn't necessarily do our hair. We didn't care. We were dirty all the time. We were playing. It was a very different way of growing up. So I don't necessarily... I wasn't put into that position to tell you. We didn't sit around and braid other friends' hairs because that's not what we did. We went outside and threw the ball. Yeah. So it was a little bit different. So I can't necessarily pass as much judgment. But I did have a sister. And as much as my sister was into looking pretty and getting her hair, there was never a sense of I want to look like this doll. Yeah. Because these filters, like you bring it up, these filters and social media and all this, it makes you feel like there is this unrealistic expectation that you have to be a certain way. And as someone that's very young, it can actually really kind of hurt their mental health. So if you're in the good place, and if your parents, in my opinion, you just have to continually preach that your kid needs to be the best version of themselves and not somebody else, or you don't want to change the way they look. You want to make them, and it's hard. I'm new at this because I've got a little baby, and I think it's going to be hard as she gets older because of
where we live, what you do, again.
And everything's at your fingertips, right?
Yeah, we're behind the eight ball, and our technology continues to improve. Our skills continue to improve. And we can do some of these things. That show, The Swan, what was it, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? It was a bunch of cosmetic surgeons or plastic surgeons with cosmetic dentistry, that really transformed someone into something else. And the show ended up being a disaster. I mean, it was, again, they took it off the TV, off the networks because it just turned out to be a disaster. And I just think it was pushing the wrong message. And my thought is, remember, no matter what you choose, you're always deserving of love and acceptance, just as you are. And that's, again, it sounds hypocritical for a plastic surgeon to say that. But again, I always go along with the idea that plastic surgery is a tool that's used to, sharpen an instrument. It's not to create a new one. And so I think we want to be the best versions of ourselves, not someone else.